Have you ever wondered what it takes to hold power, not just in moments of triumph, but in times of uncertainty, fear, and betrayal? In the intricate world of leadership, where the balance of power is delicate, the rules are seldom what they seem. This is where Niccolò Machiavelli steps in, offering a guidebook not for the faint-hearted, but for those willing to confront the reality of leadership and strategy. Machiavelli's The Prince is more than a book. It's a mirror reflecting the harsh truths of human nature and the unforgiving game of power. What is power? Is it something we inherit, something we are granted, or is it something we seize, shaped by our will, our decisions, and our actions? If you've ever paused to consider how power truly functions, not just in politics, but in everyday life, then you're already stepping into a conversation with Niccolò Machiavelli, the author of The Prince. Machiavelli doesn't ask us to view power through the lens of idealism or morality. Instead, he invites us to confront it in its rawest form. He lifts the veil on human nature and presents a vision of leadership that is pragmatic, sometimes brutal, but undeniably insightful. And it forces us to ask, can we lead effectively while holding on to our ideals, or must we compromise them to survive in a world that is often indifferent to virtue? The Prince is more than a manual on politics. It's a meditation on leadership, human behavior, and the complexity of power dynamics. Written in 1513, it has transcended its era, continuing to resonate with anyone who finds themselves in a position of influence or authority. Whether you're a business owner, a leader, or simply someone navigating the complexities of relationships, the lessons of The Prince are as relevant today as they were during Machiavelli's time. Consider this. We often speak of leadership as a moral endeavor, as if righteousness and power go hand in hand. But Machiavelli challenges that assumption head-on. He argues that power, in its essence, is not given to those who are merely virtuous, but to those who are willing to seize it. This raises an unsettling but crucial question. Can we afford to be purely virtuous if we wish to lead effectively? Or does leadership, by its very nature, require a willingness to compromise when necessary? Machiavelli offers an answer that many find uncomfortable. Leadership often requires more than just virtue. It demands pragmatism, cunning, and, at times, ruthlessness. One of his most famous metaphors is that a ruler must be both a lion and a fox. The lion represents strength, power, and the ability to defend against external threats. The fox represents cleverness, the ability to navigate through the complex web of human relationships and outsmart those who would do harm. A ruler, Machiavelli argues, who is only a lion or only a fox is bound to fail. It is in the balance of the two that true power lies. Now think about this in the modern world. Picture a CEO navigating a highly competitive industry. On one side, they face external competitors threatening to overtake their business. On the other, they manage internal politics, employees, partners, and stakeholders, all with their own motivations and agendas. To succeed, the leader must be a lion, projecting strength and decisiveness, but also a fox, carefully maneuvering through complex negotiations and building alliances. Machiavelli's brilliance lies in his understanding of human nature. He recognized that people are motivated not just by ideals, but by self-interest, fear, and ambition. He teaches us that to lead effectively, one must not only understand these motivations, but use them. This idea becomes even more powerful when we think about how to influence others in modern leadership roles, whether in business, politics, or personal relationships. Take, for example, Machiavelli's oft-debated question, is it better to be loved or feared? We'd all like to believe that love is the key to loyalty. Yet Machiavelli, with unflinching realism, suggests otherwise. He tells us that while it is ideal to be both loved and feared, if a leader must choose, it is far safer to be feared. Love, he says, is fragile. It can dissolve in the face of adversity. Fear, on the other hand, creates a more reliable form of obedience. But, and here's the nuance that is often overlooked, Machiavelli warns against tipping fear into hatred. A leader who is feared but not hated can maintain control without inciting rebellion. How does this apply to the modern world? Consider any high-stakes negotiation, whether in business or politics. If you are too lenient, you risk being taken advantage of. If you are too harsh, you risk alienating those you need on your side. It's a delicate balance. Machiavelli's insight is that leadership is often about navigating these tensions, knowing when to be firm and when to be flexible, and recognizing that fear, when properly managed, can be a powerful tool, but only if it does not cross into resentment. One of Machiavelli's more controversial ideas is that the ends justify the means. This statement, often misinterpreted as a blanket endorsement of cruelty, is actually about pragmatism. Machiavelli understood that in the chaotic world of leadership, outcomes often matter more than intentions. A ruler's primary responsibility is to maintain stability and power. If that requires morally ambiguous decisions, so be it. But does that mean we must abandon our ethics entirely to succeed? Not quite. Machiavelli isn't suggesting that we become monsters. Instead, he's reminding us that leadership, by its nature, demands difficult decisions that are not always in line with our personal values but necessary for the greater good. Let's apply this to a modern scenario. Imagine you're leading a company during an economic downturn. You face a tough decision: cut jobs to keep the business afloat, or maintain a full workforce and risk bankruptcy. Neither option is without its moral implications. But Machiavelli would tell us that the survival of the organization may require actions that are painful in the short term, but essential in the long term. The ends, the preservation of the company, justify the difficult means. However, Machiavelli is careful to point out that cruelty should only be used when absolutely necessary and should be swift and decisive. Unnecessary cruelty, or cruelty that lingers, will only breed resentment and eventually lead to a leader's downfall. The lesson here is one of restraint, knowing when to act with force and when to show mercy. As I reflect on The Prince, one question keeps coming back to me. Is this a book about cynicism, or is it simply about realism? Machiavelli doesn't shy away from the darker sides of human nature, but neither does he glorify them. Instead, he offers us a way to see leadership with clear eyes, to acknowledge that power is messy, often requiring compromises we would rather avoid. In reading The Prince, I've realized that effective leadership requires more than good intentions. It requires a deep understanding of people, their fears, their ambitions, and their self-interests. It requires the ability to adapt to changing circumstances, to be both strong and cunning, and, above all, to remain focused on the bigger picture. For those of you who lead teams, run businesses, or simply navigate the complex dynamics of life, the lessons of The Prince are as relevant today as they were 500 years ago. Power is not a one-dimensional force. It is fluid, shifting based on context, relationships, and circumstance. The practical takeaway: understand your environment. Know when to be a lion and when to be a fox. Recognize that leadership often involves difficult decisions that may not align with our ideals, but are necessary for the greater good. And, perhaps most importantly, never forget that power is not simply granted. It is seized, managed, and maintained through a careful balance of strength and strategy. So, as you reflect on your own leadership journey, ask yourself, are you too much of a lion, relying only on strength? Or are you too much of a fox, relying solely on cunning? The key to leadership lies in finding the balance between the two, in recognizing that true power is not a fixed trait, but an ever-evolving skill. Thank you for joining me on this deep exploration of Machiavelli's The Prince. If you found today's discussion insightful, please share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more thoughtful explorations of the world's most transformative books. And as always, keep books over mind,